Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at the G discounts for Germany, starting off with the ground stuff since there's quite a lot of them, especially for the major nations. The first vehicle that is on offer is the Panzer II-C DAC. Now this is just basically a copy of the standard Panzer II-C that you can find here. The only difference is the camo. That's pretty much about it. The vehicle is great. It's got a 20mm, it has access to HVAP, which can pen a lot of stuff, and is quite mobile. Doesn't have a great amount of survivability, but if someone shoots your turret, you do actually survive, because you actually have 3 crew. So at least there's that. But this vehicle comes around a lot in the pages of history, since it was used a lot in the early war stuff, so it's worth picking up just for that, and just having a bit of fun at low tier. If you are new to the German tech tree, this is also a pretty good pick if you don't want to pick up the beginner's pack, which is also very good, since it has this ridiculous machine in it. The next G vehicle is the Nobelfahrzeug, which is a heavy tank. Basically, every nation has something like this in it, some kind of just ridiculously huge machine, which has absolutely no armor on it, which was made in the 1930s or close to. And this is the German version. It has the 75mm KWK-37, the short-barreled 75. It also has access to a 37 on it, as well as a coaxial, because why not? And then also just a bunch of random machine guns and little turrets. So you have, decent pen with the 75. You have, of course, a decent pen with the APCR with the 37, but you have no armor. So you're basically just a huge wandering target with a bunch of crew inside, which can just get penned frontally and destroyed, with 13mm worth of armor being sat here in the middle. So yeah, it's not really worth it. It's a bit of fun, but I'd say that there are bigger and better heavy vehicles if you want to do this stuff with, and usually these ones are pretty crazily priced. The next vehicle is the 15cm PZW42. This is just a half-track with some rockets on it. Pretty much a waste of time. The vehicle, these rockets are designed to overpressure things. They do have quite a lot of explosive mass, but actually getting them on target and doing anything with it's not really going to work. You only also have 12 shots, so you have basically a full reload of this after shooting the 10, but yeah, it's not really going to do too much. Also has no survivability, no mobility. It's literally just a meme vehicle with rockets attached. The Panzer IIIM, the Panzer IIIN turns up. This one is quite cool because you have the good old Winterketten, so you can turn it off and get some additional armor. This is just a standard Panzer III with extra armor on it on the sides, and then also the short-barreled 75, which has pretty decent optics, surprisingly, but mainly it has this heat shell, which can penetrate anything that you face. So it's also fast-firing, which is nice, with very good elevation and depression for where the gun sits, and the additional armor doesn't really make any difference against a lot of vehicles at its BR, but under its BR it can. You can see here it has this additional plate on the front compared to what's behind, and also all of this armor on the side. If you face heat slingers, this thing can actually work really well with all the additional stuff, but a lot of vehicles just fire AP that you fight, and it'll just go straight through. I don't think this is a bad vehicle though. I think it's a pretty nice pickup, and also you can run it with the Panzer IIIL if you want to, and also the Marder and the Stu, which also exists around the same BR. You have the KV2, or the KW2 as the Germans call it. This is just a KV2. The only difference is it has an additional weak spot, which is this right here. So you don't have to shoot here, by the way, just shoot here. This is where you kill all KV2s. It has 75mm worth of armor. Also, you can shoot here if you want, but it's a little bit harder to do. Just shoot here, and you'll knock the whole turret, and it will die. So, yeah, it's a donkey gun, the 152mm M10. It does have access to a semi-armor piercing shell, which is quite funny. Also, it has the concrete shell, but the HE is where you go. That's the one you bring for the memes. And it has a long reload, terrible targeting speed, terrible everything else, but you know what? It has a big donkey gun that can every so often donk people, so it's a bit of fun. So if you like that, have at it. I think there are much better opportunities in the game. Then you have the Panzerbefehlswagen 4J. This is a Panzer IV with additional armor on it. The problem with this vehicle is, since it's a Panzer IV, it has a terrible horizontal targeting speed. So basically, the actual horizontal guidance is only 5.9 degrees per second, which is awful. And that's because the J's didn't have the electronic motor or whatever. They had the manual turn for the good old turret ring. That's why that's so slow. So this is a lot worse than stuff like the Panzer IV-G and Panzer IV-F, but basically at the same BR. It's got some additional armor though, which is nice, and the gun will work very well at the BR, but just understand that turret rotation's gonna catch you out. Just to kind of give you a comparison, the Panzer IV-H, which is at the same BR, you can see there the targeting speed is basically double of the other one. So a huge difference between the two. So this one's a bit of a rough pickup. I suppose if you want to bring your rank 3s in, your rank 2s into a rank 3 lineup for dailies, you could do it, but I honestly think it's probably better just to do that with a plane. You have the Panzerkampfwagen Churchill, this big old behemoth. This used to be really good because it was in a lineup which was really good. The lineup nowadays isn't as good, so therefore it isn't as good. The vehicle also has very easy armor to penetrate, 89mm on the turret, which is flat, which really isn't that hard to go through, and same with this area too, and this area too. So if you have anything that pens over 89mm, you can just go straight through it. From the side, it's a little bit more dodgy since there's a few armor pieces here and there, but once again, 89 on the turret, and most things at this BR will be able to penetrate through that. So yeah, not great. Very slow as well, very arduous, doesn't work very well. T-34 747 went up in BR because it should have done a long time ago. This is just a standard T-34, which was captured by the Germans, which they removed stuff from. So no side skirts, and also a few other things which aren't there. You can see this is a standard camouflage with all the wonderful bushes that seem to have gone awry. But the vehicle, very mobile, has the F-34 cannon, which, you know, can do anything you really want with it. You know, you have the extra penetration with the 350B MD8 fuse if you want to, and also even heat and the standard AP if you really feel like it, and APCR. But the main thing is mobility, armor, which has some trap shots, but can be hard to hit because of volumetrics, such as the turret ring, and also little additional armored pieces just to stop some shells that you might not be used to. The kill shot on this is here and also here, but as I said, because of volumetric and desync, it can be quite hard to actually hit those things. You got the Brumbar 2. This one's just a bit of a fun donkey vehicle. Ridiculous reload for the 150mm gun, but it does have good elevation and good depression. Doesn't have anything else. So the reason you take this is, oh, you're on a conquest mode in a down tier. Okay, well, maybe your armor holds up on the front, and you just walk forward and fire and then go home. And yeah, so you have the HE with a lot of TNT equivalent, and then you also have the heat, which can pen quite a lot if you want to, but once again, just take the HE and have a bit of fun. This vehicle is never really going to do very well. Like, it's not gonna break the game or anything. I mean, the frontal armor can be really annoying to deal with, but then again, the hull still doesn't have a ton of armor on it, so you can just kind of go through that. Just don't get focused on this big block of armor that they put on the front. But yeah, it's quite fun for what it does, but it's not meta-defining and won't really be that good for grinding. The next vehicle is the KV-1C. They put this thing up in BR more recently, so it's not as powerful as it was, but it's still pretty good. The vehicle itself is a mixture of the KV-1 and the 75mm KWK-40. So you basically take the firepower that destroys KV-1s and put it on a KV-1. And now you have both. You have the armor, you have the mobility, and the firepower. So it's a really good combo. But as I said, they got up BR'd, and it's at a bit of a wonky BR for Germany, which is 5.0. They don't really have much there to be able to run with it, only really the VK, and that's about it. And you got to be careful about getting upted into that 5.7 bracket, where a lot of these vehicles sit. So it's not in the best place, I think is probably best to say, especially since its weak spots are a lot easier to hit at high BRs. The next vehicle is the Panzerbefehlswagen 6P. I enjoy this one quite a lot. I've had some very good times with this. Basically, what you have here is a Porsche chassis with the standard Tiger turret, and that means that you still have this really annoying weak spot, which people can shoot with APHE, and it goes down into the turret and you die because it kills the crew in it. But you do have some ridiculous armor on the front of it, which equals about 200 millimeters worth of stuff, which is quite fun. You also have access to some pretty decent armor on the turret too, so as long as nobody knows to shoot here, you're generally fine. You even have some angled armor, which can work in your favor from the front, but can work against you if you are angled against them, so that can be a bit of a problem. Decent armor on the sides too, and also on the back. But yeah, the vehicle doesn't have great targeting speed because of the horizontal drive not being there, but it does have the standard 88 from the Tiger, so it can pen a lot and can do a ton. One of the cool things about the Porsche chassis is it has a really good reverse, so once you're in, you can get out pretty quick, and that is really cool, and that's why I really like the vehicle at 5.7. As I said, this cupola is just annoying. I wish it didn't exist in its form, but c'est la vie. Carve everything in life. The next vehicle is the Befehlswagen Jagdpanther, the G1. This is just a standard Jagdpanther, nothing really different. It got updated a few years ago, and the armor model works a lot better now. It still doesn't have crazy amounts of armor. I feel like a lot of people think the Jagdpanther is more armored than it is, but only 130 millimeters worth of protection. If you actually, like for example, bring along like one of the meta vehicles for good old, let's just say America, you can actually pen like pretty much all of the front of the Jagdpanther, right? So you can just hammer it at its BR, which has been its problem for the longest time. It cannot survive a shot, and that just kind of sucks for it. But in a down tier you can, and you can make that long 88 work. It's just a bit of a dodgy area for the vehicle. It also has no armor on the sides, so you basically just have frontal armor, and that's it. And even that frontal armor can get penetrated pretty easily. Then you have the RU-251, which still sits at rank 4. This vehicle is very good. You really should not sleep on this vehicle, especially since they just neutered the whole 7.3 German lineup. This one is probably your only vehicle between 7.0 to 8.0, which is going to keep everything together. It has the 90mm, the BK90, which doesn't do as much damage as people want it to, but still has very good penetration in the form of its Heat FS. It has insanely good mobility and can go forwards and backwards at a very good click. It has scouting, so you don't have to frontally attack things all the time. And also it has, you know, access to just insane mobility. You're not going to survive a shot because this thing doesn't have a lot of armor, but the idea is to get into positions quickly in a match so you don't get shot. And then you can use the gun depression with the gun to be able to hammer targets while scouting everybody else. It works really well. It's a fantastic vehicle. Even after 2 BR ups, it's still very, very good. Then you have the good old M47, the Patton 2. This is just a bog standard Patton. It got a buff more recently. Now they gave it more gun depression, which I suppose is quite nice. But the vehicle itself, it's just a Patton 2. And a Patton 2, when it's spaded and you have the Heat FS, works well. It's got good mobility, good targeting speed, good everything. But it's kind of boring, and at the same time, after they gutted the 7.3 BR for Germany, it's nowhere near as good. You can see here the BRs go from basically 6.7 all the way to 7.780. You have the Weasel, I suppose, and if you have the RU-251 and the Patton 2, you technically have a lineup, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. Then you got the TAM, the TAM 2IP, the big old chunky TAM. This is really powerful. It's a really good vehicle. I've seen it a lot, and a lot of people can use it very effectively because at 9.0 it has the 105mm DM33, and the DM33 is a very good round for the 105. It also has all of the kind of utility you want. The only thing it doesn't have is thermals, and you don't need them. You have scouting, you have, decent survivability with the additional armor on it, and also the mobility from the engine in the front, which does soak shots quite well, and also with the first stage ammo behind the turret, it means that you're not going to get hit in an area down here and lose and die, which is quite good. The vehicle is really nice, especially against stuff like autocannons from the front, but you shouldn't really get into those situations because, as I said, you have the stabilizer on the gun, you have the standard reload for the 105, you have good gun depression, and you have the scouting and the DM33 to keep you going. It's very powerful, and if you don't want to spend on something like the L44 or the Leopard 2A4, it's a very good vehicle to have at 9.0. The only thing I would be a little bit worried about is the lineup. You pretty much only have the A1A1. Everything else that is meta for Germany at the moment around this BR is 9.3, which is a bit rough because that obviously gets up-tiered into 10.3. For aviation for Germany, you have a bunch of pretty decent picks, starting off with Flagel, or however you say it. Basically, it's a BF1 and 9A, and it only has two 792s, has decent flight performance, but the engine isn't very powerful, and at 1.3 it'll be fine, but I feel like once again, with Germany, there isn't really a lot of point in picking up a vehicle like this. I would wait until, you've kind of ground through these to get to rank 2 and then maybe start picking up some things if you want to. The R2 though, the Ju-87 is not actually a bad pickup, and the reason for this is because they added a 1,000 kilo bomb to it and also a 500 kilo. So if you want to use this in ground forces or if you want to use this in naval, it can work exceptionally well. There is a standard tech tree one though, so you could just grind that out if you wanted to. It would only take you maybe an hour or two, but yeah, if you want to skip that, you can use this in ground forces. Just remember, there is a kind of little arm for the Ju-87, so you have to, it delays the bomb launch, so you have to be a bit careful with when you fire it. The next one is the Wellington, the Jelly Welly. This is in the Warbond shop, so pick it up there if you want it, so you can get it for free, but the vehicle itself isn't very good. Low survivability, low speed, not a great bomb load, and also terrible armament, so not really worth it. It also doesn't get torpedoes, which is one of the features of some of the British ones. The AL2 1942 is a much better pick, which is right here. You can use this in a lot of ground kind of areas and also naval. It does have access to secondary loadouts too, surprisingly, with two 250s or 450s, and also the good old 23mm, which are very good at popping even medium tanks in air realistic and also ground realistic. So this one I would say is a pretty good pick, but you can give it a go in the Soviet tech tree and see if you enjoy it in the German one. The Yak-1B is fine too. It's, once again, just an okay vehicle. I would say it's probably better to play the fighters in the German standard tech tree, like the Bf-109s and the early Focke-Wulfs, but the Yak-1B won't let you down. It doesn't really do anything badly, apart from high-altitude performance, and most vehicles at 3.0 don't go to high altitude, so it's not really going to make a difference. The BV-238, this vehicle is, I would call it a casual vehicle, and what I mean by that is if you've had a long day, if you just want to kind of chill and play something and not really be bothered, the BV-238 is the way. It's a vehicle that spawns at very high altitude because it gets a long-range bomber spawn at 3.7. It has a very nice set of armaments with a 4 quad 13mm on it, with 3 of them pointing backwards and 1 of them pointing forwards, and then it also has a dual 20mm on the top of it as well. It also has an insane bomb load, which you can destroy a bunch of bases with, and then you can just go back home. You also have 6 good old engines, which are massive, and it's a nice way of just generally, researching rank 3, 2, and 1 of the German tech tree. But at the same time, you know, it's not really that amazing, or, you know, it's not one of those vehicles that's going to be very crazy fun to play. It's just a chill time to read a book and grind out the tech tree. The Razorback P47 is here too. This is a slightly worse version than the American and British one, basically because it doesn't get access to bombs. So this is more limited to a air attack role, and that's kind of fine. These P47s are really good at air attack. The only issue is it takes a while to actually set them up, and in a lot of missions, people just don't have the patience anymore. So you'll be sat there where most of your team will either be dead or alive, and you will still be trying to get into position to make sure that you can go forward with. So yeah, a bit of a pain, but what are you going to do? At the end of the day, it works, and it can do that job very well. Just can't really do too many other jobs as well. Then you also have the TAR 154, which is a high altitude heavy fighter. So this one is fun if you get the right matchups. It does have a really nice armament of 2 MG151s and MG108s, but just understand it's heavily limited. This is just kind of an air attack vehicle, so it has 2 powerful engines, the UMO 211Ns. It also doesn't get any secondary armament, so you're just limited to the guns, and you're basically just going to go high altitude, go after bombers, and then after bombers use yourself as a support fighter to go after other people. And that's fine, you know, it's a super maneuverable twin-engine fighter, but it's still a twin-engine fighter, so it doesn't have as much maneuverability as a bunch of others. I think it's cool though, and I really like it. I just wish it had a few more roles that it could fill. Then you have this vehicle, which is the Focke-Wulf 190 A5U14. This one annoys me because it should be in the tech tree. It's literally a Focke-Wulf with an F5B torpedo attached to it, and therefore it's good in naval, but at the same time it's still just a standard A5. It only has 2 20mm, which is enough to be able to kill anything that's around the place, but at the same time you have less armament than the other Focke-Wulfs, and you only gain the torpedo. So unless you're playing naval, it's not really worth it. There are much better options. The 219 is another just wonky one in the game, which is really cool, but also if you are left alone, therefore, you know, you're kind of allowed to do PvE, this vehicle can win you a game pretty much instantaneously. But getting left alone is the key part. You have the DB603E engines with a lot of power behind them, and that means that this thing can canter when it wants to, but also this is what's more interesting. You have the MK103s, the MK108s, and also the 20mm MG151s. So all of these guns all have different uses. The 103s can pop tanks pretty efficiently with their armored target spells right here, the HVAP. The 20mm are able to deal with light targets. The MK108s are able to deal with light targets too, but they all have different velocities, so it can be a little bit hard aiming them all at the same time, but you'll get used to it. But the main thing about this vehicle is it's a ground pounder. So if you are left alone, you will be able to get a lot done, you'll get a lot of rewards, you'll be able to win the battle for your team, but most of the time you won't get left alone and you'll just die, because you have no defenses. This thing turns like a bus, loses a lot of its energy, and also just gets outturned by anything that you face. So it's an awkward one. It's a vehicle that has the opportunity of doing a lot, but the vast majority of the time will do very little. Then you have the DO335B2. This one, if you enjoy 5.7 for the ground portion of the game, is a must-have. It has 3 30mm MK103s, which will just tear apart pretty much anything that you will fight. You can see the M103 here in the middle of the engine, but you also have 2 on the wings. You have, on top of that, 2 MG151s too, so a metric ton of firepower. And on top of that, you can bring 1 500 in a central bomb bay and 2 250s on the wings. So you have the opportunity in this vehicle to kill like 10 ground targets, which is nuts in ground realistic. In air realistic, you can use it as a really good bomber hunter if you see any bombers at the BR that it goes at, but it does, I believe, get an air spawn, so you can just go after them straight away and then play as a support fighter, which is pretty fun. But yeah, this thing has a nuts amount of firepower, and the only downside is it doesn't turn very well, and you have to play around that. And if you get jumped by somebody, you aren't getting away. So the best thing to do is to try and get as much damage in as possible in ground, and then just end up bugging out. It's a very good vehicle, though, for that setup. Then you have the Ju-288. The Ju-288 is one of those vehicles which has annoyed me for many years, because it basically destroyed a BR bracket. And the reason why it did this is because it was too easy to play, and also was used a lot by botters because it was so easy to play. It has really good rewards on it, has a very nice bomb load, which is a bit awkward, especially since they haven't given it custom loadouts yet, and at the same time, it has the single 20mm in the back, plus a bunch of 30mm to keep it alive. Surprisingly, this 120mm here has a very good set of elevation and also traverse characteristics, but it will just set stuff on fire all the time and annihilate things. It's very powerful. And this machine is fast, it's maneuverable, it's able to do kind of whatever it wants, mainly because it has the DB610 engines, which are 2 DBs kind of wedged together to create a mega one. So this one, even though it looks like it's twin-engined, technically it has 4 engines under the hood. Same with the Grief, which is why it's, you know, so powerful and fast. But yeah, it's an annoying vehicle to exist, and it's ruined a BR bracket, which is why it shows how good it is, right? It's very good for grinding and just kind of relaxing. The last one is the G91R4. This one isn't as good as it used to be, but it's still in a fine place, even after a lot of the BR changes. I would say it's probably better in kind of ground forces right now than it is in air forces, because even in air forces, where it has all of the AIM-9Bs and it has, you know, the nice armament, you're not very fast, you're not very nimble, and you're going to go up against a lot of 9.3s and you're going to die. But in ground forces, you have access to the Nords, and even after all of the nerfs to the Nords, they're still very good, still very powerful, and will annihilate stuff even if they miss. So if you are ground orientated, the R4 is the way to go. If you are not ground orientated, then I think it's probably better to not get this and maybe focus on a different vehicle after the BR changes. There is a German helicopter on sale, the Mi-24P HFS-80. This is a pretty standard Mi-24. At 9.7, it does have quite a nice lineup in ground to run with, so that's really cool. And it has access to the IRCM, which means that a lot of the IR-guided missile launchers, which this thing has, will really struggle to be able to hit it. It also has a HIRSS system, meaning that you'll have to get really close in order for these machines to lock onto you, and also has countermeasures too that you can use. The vehicle itself has the R60 MKs, which are the all-aspect R60s, but the main thing you run it for is the Sturms. Now, the only issue with the Sturm is it doesn't have a great firing range compared to a lot of other missiles, which is why this thing is at 9.7. It has the systems of actually higher BR vehicles, but this one is limited by the Sturms. You do have these funny guns, though, that they added more recently to have a bit of fun with, but yeah, I would say this is actually a pretty decent pickup, especially if you want to grind helis. The Sturms, even though they don't have great distance, you have a lot of survivability to make it so you can get closer. You outrange all of the gun AAs, and the missile AAs you have counters against. Overall, pretty good pick. For Naval, Germany doesn't actually have that great options. To start off, we'll have a look at the coastal side of things. You have the LS for ESO. This is just the standard LS3, which is in here with a 20mm instead of a 15. So if you like the LS, I suppose you could pick this up. It will do exactly the same stuff as the other one, just have, I suppose, a slightly bigger punch, but it's not going to make a difference to the vehicle. You basically use it to cap things, and that's about it, so I wouldn't really bother with this one. The KM5 is a just hilarious pick. I don't know why you would pick this thing up. One 15mm and then a dual 792 and then 2 torpedoes, and you're not even that fast. So this thing is way over BR'd. I don't know why it's here. This is basically the equivalent of a 1.0, a 1.7. Don't know what's going on. Don't buy this. And then you have the VS8, which is a little bit of fun, especially at rank 3. I kind of like the idea of this vehicle. I just wish it was I wish the turrets had better firing angles. So the 15mm for Germany have a lot of ammunition. You just have to worry about the overheat on them, but overall they're pretty good. The problem is these ones here have really awkward firing angles because they're raised up and they're more designed for like AA. But in the game, since you mostly fight naval machines, you can only get 3 of them on target, and if you do get 3 of them on target, you have to show a pretty large silhouette. You also have all the mines, and the mines are really cool. I like mines. I think they're awesome. They haven't really found themselves in the game too much because they're kind of a win more mechanic. You need to take over an area in order to use them effectively. And this vehicle here, with its hydrofoil, can get to those areas pretty quickly and, you know, put down all the mines, but the area has to be clean. And by that point, you've pretty much won the area anyway, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense. The M802 is also on offer. This one's pretty good. The vehicle itself has 2 105s, which can just donk anything coastal-wise. It has some 37s, it has some 20s, and it also has some torpedoes at weird firing angles. So this one was a monster back in the day because it was really powerful because you just couldn't kill it. Nowadays you can, but it's still very good because of those 105s and the secondary armaments. You'll have a good time with this, and it'll also be good for grinding out the tech tree since it's a rank 4, so you can get most of the vehicles with it at a good research rate. For Blue Water, you got the Lukes, which is just a standard kind of destroyer for the Germans. Only 3 128s, which the 128s are okay. They do need a little bit of work to, you know, to compete with a lot of other nations, meaning that you're going to have to be pretty accurate. You're going to have to do quite a lot of damage. They don't have any AP, for example, which kind of sucks. They also have the torpedoes, which are quite nice, but I would say just give this one a miss. There are much better options down the line. You also have the Jaguar, which is the RAB tier class. This one, once again, just the 3-gun setup, but this time 105s instead. So 15 rounds a minute, so a good fire rate, but also no AP once again. So you can't really do too much with it. I would give this one a miss too. The first one that I would actually consider looking at is the Z47. And the reason is because it has a lot more armament. It has the 3 dual 128mm. Now these ones are only really HE2, but the difference between these and the other ones is the fire rate. These ones have a first stage fire rate of 20 rounds a minute and a second stage of 18, so you could just keep hammering out the damage. You also have these huge fuel tanks which protect you quite well against a lot of vehicles, and you also have the torpedoes, the G7s to use, plus a bunch of secondaries too to keep you alive from aircraft. You have 7 dual 37s on this thing, which is just really nice. So yeah, this one is the pickup if you want to get any of these destroyers from the premium side of things. You'll have a really good time in this one, and you'll get a lot of score, a lot of SL, a lot of RP, and you'll be able to use it for the events, which will be coming around. Then you got the Karlsruhe. So the Karlsruhe is a K-class, and as a person who's played a lot of these vehicles around these BRs, these ones are just in weird places. So they have a lot of firepower and do a lot of damage, but they have very low survivability, and the Karlsruhe is no different. The crew size is not huge. It does have a bit of armor on it, but you have these huge, this huge ammo rack at the back for both of these guns. Both of these guns are also off-center, so if you want to fire to this side, you can see that it's going to screw this turret, so you always have to line up on this side in order to get all of your guns on target. The 150s do actually have quite a good fire rate, which is what bails them out, and also good selection of different rounds to be able to do damage to different things. But my main peeve with all these 5.3s, 5.7s, which are set up like this for the Germans, is just their survivability is nowhere near the same as a lot of the other ones that you fight at this BR. So you'll be able to take out a few, but you will go down too. Whereas if you have a look at a lot of the British 5.7s, for example, you can survive a lot more, even though they don't have a ton of armor either. But this Karlsruhe, and also the Kern, and the Leipzig, and also the Nuremberg, all struggle from that survivability point of view. You also have the Nassau, which is an additional one, which I think this is the first time it's been discounted, maybe? I might be wrong about that. But yeah, it's just a standard good old World War II battleship or battle cruiser. It has access to some big old guns in a terrible configuration, so you can only get half of the guns on target at once, 4 of the turrets out of the 6, and you are a huge ammo rack, but that's okay because you have a massive amount of armor right here, and then also the coal bunkers, and then also underneath you have a bunch of other stuff in the way for this. You won't die a lot in this machine, but also at the same time you probably won't have too much fun because you'll be going up against fundamentally better machines than you are. One of the cool things about the German guns, though, is with their AP, they have very good penetration and good explosive mass, and with their SAP, they have decent explosive mass and good penetration too. So you're always going to do damage with these things. You're going to be able to do quite a lot. That's something that we saw from the Bayern, for example. Oh, sorry, the Baden, which they added. But at the same time, it's not going to be as good as other vehicles that you may get. That's all for Germany. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Tullio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pieman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Alan Hacker, Ozzy Panzer, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Cam Arslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.